Her name is Iva Lirael, a beauty no one in the Crescent Moon Pack had ever seen, not in stories, not in dreams, not even in the sacred paintings carved into the ancient temple walls. Elders who had lived for over 2 centuries would later whisper that the moon goddess must have sculpted her slowly, lovingly, as though she intended to create perfection only once. Iva Lirael was beautiful in a way that made language feel small. Her skin held the soft glow of moonlight resting upon calm water, pale, luminous, almost unreal. When dawn light touched her, she shimmered faintly, like the surface of the sea when the first sunbeam kissed it awake. Her hair fell in long, silken waves the color of midnight tides, deep, dark, and endlessly flowing down her back to her waist. And her eyes were what people remembered long after she had passed. Vast, deep, and blue like the oldest part of the ocean, the kind of blue that looked as though it held secrets, storms, and forgotten magic beneath its surface. Men forgot their words when she walked by. Women paused mid-conversation. Even children, wild and restless, grew quiet in her presence, staring as if afraid she might vanish if they blinked too long. But beauty, in the wolf territories, was never the greatest gift. Strength was. And Iva Lirael had none, or so they believed. She lived far from the heart of the Packlands, where stone castles clawed at the sky and warriors trained beneath iron bells. Her home lay deep within the hidden woodland territory, a quiet, mist-woven forest where ancient trees stood so tall they blocked the sun for most of the day. The air there always smelled of pine resin, wild herbs, and rain-soaked earth. Silver streams wound through the undergrowth like living threads, and at night the forest glowed faintly beneath the watchful gaze of the moon. At the edge of this forgotten woodland stood a modest wooden cottage, small and weathered but lovingly kept. Wildflowers grew in uneven clusters around it, lavender, moon lilies, and blue frost bells, all planted by careful hands. This was where Iva lived. Not in palaces. Not among nobles. But in quiet simplicity, with her grandmother. Her grandmother, Elder Mayalise, was a woman who had bent but never broken. Her silver hair was always braided down her back, her eyes sharp despite her age. She was known in nearby settlements as a healer, a keeper of herbs, and a woman who understood the language of old magic, though she never spoke of it openly. To Iva, she was simply home. Their life was peaceful, almost hidden from the rest of the pack. Mornings began with gathering herbs beneath dew-drenched leaves. Afternoons were spent grinding roots into medicine or drying flowers on woven wrecks. Nights were for stories, ancient pack legends, moon prophecies, and lullabies sung in a language older than the territories themselves. Iva rarely left the woodland. Not because she was forbidden, but because the world beyond the trees had never felt kind to her. On the rare days she walked into the village market with her grandmother, the atmosphere always changed the moment she arrived. Conversations softened. Heads turned. Merchants forgot to collect coins. Hunters straightened unconsciously, drawn by a presence they could not explain. Admiration followed her like perfume. But so did whispers. There she is, the wolfless beauty. Such a face, wasted on a cursed girl. 18 winters and still no shift. Not even a flicker of wolf in her scent. In wolf territories, shifting was sacred, the moment a wolf spirit awakened within a person's body. It was power. Identity. Destiny. Children shifted as early as 13. Late bloomers by 16. But Iva Lirael had never shifted. Not once. No glowing eyes beneath the full moon. No heightened aura. No wolf voice in her mind. Even the pack seers, who could sense the faintest spiritual energy, felt nothing when they stood near her, only a strange, deep stillness, like the silent depths of the ocean where light could not reach. It made people uneasy. Some called her cursed. Others pitied her. A few feared her. Yet none could stop staring. Because the contradiction was impossible, a girl with the beauty of a moon goddess, and the spiritual presence of an empty sky. Elder maids never entertained the whispers. Whenever villagers spoke ill of Iva, the old woman's gaze would sharpen like a blade wrapped in silk. "My granddaughter is exactly as the moon intended," she would say calmly. "Nothing more. Nothing less." But in the quiet hours of night, when the forest fell silent and the moonlight poured through their window, even maids sometimes watched Iva with something deeper than concern. Something closer to anticipation. As though she were waiting. For what, she never said. Iva herself tried not to dwell on what she lacked. She found joy in small things, the hush of the forest at dawn, the way fireflies gathered near the stream, the warmth of her grandmother's hand in hers. Yet there were moments, fleeting, secret moments, when she would stand alone beneath the full moon. Watching. Listening. Feeling something stir just beyond reach, not inside her like a wolf spirit, but around her, vast and ancient, like waves pressing gently against the shore. And then it would fade, leaving only silence. So the pack continued to believe what they saw. That Iva Lirael, the most beautiful maiden in the Crescent Moon territories, was also the most incomplete. A girl blessed with ethereal beauty, and cursed with the absence of a wolf. None of them knew the truth, sleeping beneath her skin. None of them knew why the forest felt different when she walked through it. And none of them, not the villagers, not the elders, not even the warriors, could have imagined that whispers of her beauty had already begun traveling beyond the woodland. Riding on the tongues of visiting hunters. Sweeping through the halls of distant fortresses. Until they reached the ears of a king who had never been denied anything in his life. The Elfie King. And when he heard of the wolfless girl whose beauty rivaled moonlight itself, obsession would begin.
The whispers of Iva Lirael's beauty did not travel in a single night, but they never faded either. They lingered in taverns, rode on merchant carts, and hid in the laughter of hunters returning from the woodland borders. Yet for all the rumors, most of the Crescent Moon pack still saw her only in passing, a fleeting vision between trees, a glimpse of moonlight where no moon should be. Until the morning of market day. Market day came only twice each moon cycle, and it was the one time the hidden woodland folk stepped fully into pack life. Stalls filled the village square, furs draped over wooden frames, silver trinkets glinting in the sun, baskets overflowing with herbs, fruits, and freshly baked grain bread. Warriors laughed loudly, children chased each other between tables, and maidens walked in groups, hoping to catch the attention of passing guards. It was loud, lively, ordinary. Until Iva arrived. She walked beside her grandmother as she always did, carrying a small woven basket of dried moon lilies and frostbell petals. Her cloak was simple, pale blue, but it could not hide what she was. The moment she stepped past the tree line into the open square, the market stilled. Not completely, but enough to feel unnatural. A hunter mid-sentence stopped speaking. A merchant forgot to hand over change. Even the pack hounds resting near the well lifted their heads, watching her with quiet alertness. She moved softly, almost soundlessly, her midnight hair swaying behind her like a shadowed tide. Sunlight brushed her skin, and again that faint, sea-like glow shimmered, subtle, but impossible to ignore. Men stared openly. Not with disrespect, but awe. Women stared too, some with admiration, others with tight, quiet resentment. She's even more beautiful up close. But what use is beauty without a wolf? I heard she's nearly 19 now. Still nothing. A hollow shell wrapped in pretty skin. The words were hushed, but not enough. Jealous maidens watched her every movement, their eyes sharp as glass. Many of them had trained for years to be chosen by high-ranking warriors, even the Alpha's court someday. Yet when Iva walked by, all their efforts seemed to vanish beneath the effortless gravity of her presence.
So they did what envy always does.
They whispered louder. She must be cursed. My cousin said the seers couldn't sense a wolf in her at all. Imagine being that beautiful, and that useless. Iva heard some of it. She always did. But she never reacted. She simply continued helping her grandmother arrange herbs on their stall, her expression calm, distant, like waves that refused to break no matter how the wind pushed them. It was Elder Maylis who noticed the shift in the air first. Not the stares. Not the whispers. Something deeper. The old woman's sharp eyes scanned the square slowly, thoughtfully, before returning to her granddaughter. For a brief moment, her gaze lingered on Iva with quiet intensity, not worry, but recognition. Because while others saw emptiness where a wolf should be, Maylis felt something ancient moving beneath the surface. Old. Vast. Sleeping. And it was growing closer to waking. Before she could speak, a new presence entered the square. One that carried the scent of steel, travel, and battle. A visiting warrior. He bore the crest of the Capitol Guard on his shoulder, a sign he served directly under the Alpha King. Dust from long roads still clung to his boots, and his expression held the mild boredom of a man who had seen too many markets to be impressed by another. At least, until he saw her. He stopped walking mid-stride. His gaze locked onto Iva as though pulled by an unseen force. For several long seconds, he did not move, simply stared, eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to understand what he was looking at. Not just beauty. Something else. Something that made the hairs on his arms rise despite the absence of any wolf aura. He watched as she handed herbs to an elderly woman, smiling gently, her voice soft as flowing water. The contrast struck him, a face fit for a queen, dressed in the modest linen of woodland folk. One of the local hunters noticed his stare and chuckled. First time seeing her? The warrior didn't look away. Who is she? Iva Lirael. The wolfless girl from the woods. A pause. Wolfless, he repeated. The hunter nodded. Never shifted. Not once. The warrior's eyes darkened slightly, not with disdain, but intrigue. Because standing there, watching her, he felt something profoundly wrong about that claim. He said nothing more. But he continued watching until she and her grandmother packed their herbs and began the quiet walk back toward the woodland path. Only when she disappeared behind the trees did he finally move again. That night, when he resumed his journey to the capital fortress, he carried many reports to deliver to the Alpha King. Border updates. Rogue sightings. Trade routes. Yet none of them lingered in his thoughts the way one image did. A girl with moonlit skin. Ocean-deep eyes. And no wolf. By the time he stood in the great throne hall days later, kneeling before the most powerful alpha in the territories, it was her face he described first. And far away in the woodland cottage, unaware of the storm her beauty had begun, Iva Lirael slept peacefully beneath the moon. Far from the quiet woodland where moonlight softened every shadow, power lived in stone, steel, and command. At the heart of the crescent moon territories rose the capital fortress, a colossal structure of black granite and silver-veined marble carved into the mountain itself. Banners bearing the royal wolf crest hung from its towering spires, snapping sharply in the high winds. Warriors trained day and night within its lower courtyards, their roars echoing like distant thunder. And above them all ruled the Alpha King. His name was Kalian Draxer, a name spoken with reverence, fear, and unhidden admiration across every pack land. Kalian was not merely an alpha by title. He was dominant given human form. Tall, broad-shouldered, and powerfully built, he carried the physical authority of a born ruler. His presence alone could silence a room of warriors without a single command spoken. His hair was dark. Not soft like night, but sharp like storm clouds gathering before battle. It fell just past his collar in controlled disarray, often damp from training or war councils. His jaw was carved in harsh perfection, and his lips held the permanent ghost of a knowing smirk, the expression of a man who had never faced denial. But it was his eyes that marked him as king. Golden. Not warm gold, but molten, predatory gold that glowed faintly whenever his wolf stirred beneath his skin. When he looked at someone, it felt less like being seen, and more like being assessed. Measured. Owned. He had never lost a war. Not against rival packs. Not against rogues. Not even against the northern alphas who once tried to challenge his claim to the throne. Kalian had crushed them all with calculated precision, expanding crescent moon dominance until neighboring territories spoke his name carefully. Victory had shaped him. So I had admiration. Because strength alone did not define Kalian's reputation. Desire did. Maidens across the territories dreamed of becoming his chosen mate. Noble daughters trained in court etiquette for years in hopes of being noticed. Warrior-born females sharpened their combat skills, believing strength might win his respect. Even visiting princesses from allied packs arrived draped in jewels, seeking his attention. They competed constantly, through beauty, skill, lineage, and influence. And Kalian let them. Not cruelly, but knowingly. He was accustomed to being wanted. To watching gazes follow him through throne halls. To hearing hushed conversations when he passed. To seeing rivalry spark between maidens hoping for a glance, a word, a claim. He had taken lovers before, powerful women, beautiful women, strategic alliances wrapped in temporary passion. But he had never chosen a mate. Not because he couldn't. But because none had ever felt worthy of standing beside him as queen. And deep within his pride lived a belief so absolute it had never once been challenged. No woman would ever reject him. Why would they? He was the strongest alpha alive. The ruler of the most dominant territory. Desired. Feared. Worshipped. Untouchable. So when the visiting capital guard warrior finally knelt before his throne to deliver travel reports, Kalian listened with half-interest at first. Border stability. Trade agreements. Rogue activity. Routine matters. Until the warrior hesitated. A subtle pause, but enough to catch the Alpha King's attention. Kalian's golden gaze lifted lazily from the armrest of his throne. Speak, he commanded. The warrior bowed his head slightly deeper. There is one more matter, my king. Not political. But unusual. A faint smirk tugged at Kalian's lips. Unusual rarely earns my time. Continue carefully. The warrior swallowed once. I encountered a maiden in the woodland territory. One the villagers speak of constantly. Kalian's interest did not rise yet, maidens were rarely matters of report. But then the warrior chose his next words carefully. They call her, the seaborn beauty without a wolf. Silence followed. Not dismissal. Not yet. Kalian's fingers stilled against the throne arm. Explain, he said. And so the warrior did. He spoke of the market day stillness, how conversations died when she entered. He described her skin like moonlit water, her eyes like the deepest sea, her presence powerful despite the absence of any wolf aura. He spoke of men staring in awe. Women whispering in envy. Seers sensing nothing, yet feeling unsettled all the same. And most of all, he spoke of the contradiction. A beauty fit to rule beside an alpha, born without a wolf. For the first time since the report began, Kalian leaned forward. Not out of disbelief, but intrigue. Golden eyes sharpened, predator bright. A wolfless maiden draws this much attention, he murmured. Yes, my king. And she has never shifted? Never. A quiet scoff left his lips, not mocking, but disbelieving in a different way. Then her beauty is exaggerated by bored villagers. That was my thought as well, the warrior admitted. Until I saw her. A pause. Longer this time. Something unreadable passed across Kalian's expression. Is she noble-born? No, my king. She lives in a woodland cottage. Poor. Hidden from pack society. That, more than anything, should have ended his interest. Yet instead, it deepened it. Because Kalian had seen every form of beauty wealth could produce, jeweled, perfumed, trained, perfected. But untouched beauty? Hidden beauty? Beauty powerful enough to silence a market despite being wolfless? That was new. His smirk returned slowly, edged with ego. So, he said softly, a maiden who draws admiration without power. Without status, without wolf. He leaned back into his throne, confidence settling over him like a familiar cloak. Tell me, he added, voice laced with amused arrogance, does she know who I am? I would assume so, my king. Good. A slow, predatory glint lit his golden eyes. Then she already dreams of being claimed. The warrior did not respond. He didn't dare. But somewhere deep beneath Kalian's pride, curiosity had already ignited. Not desire. Not yet. But interest sharpened by ego. Because in his mind, the story was simple. A rare beauty existed in his territory. And like all rare things within his dominion, she would eventually belong to him. He did not know her name yet. But before the week ended, he would. And far away beneath the quiet woodland moon, Iva Lirael remained unaware that the most powerful alpha alive had just begun thinking about her.
The summons came at dawn, not carried by rumor this time, but by iron and authority. Mist still clung to the woodland floor when the royal guards arrived. Their armor, embossed with the crescent moon crest, glinted coldly beneath the filtered morning light. Even the forest seemed to recoil at their presence, birds fell silent, and the wind itself slowed as though unwilling to move around them. Iva Lirael stood just outside the cottage when they emerged from the tree line. For a brief moment, no one spoke. The captain of the guard stepped forward, his posture formal but firm. In his hand rested a sealed parchment marked with the Alpha King's insignia. By order of Alpha King Kalian Drexer, he announced, voice cutting cleanly through the quiet, Iva Lirael of the woodland territory is summoned to appear before the royal court. Behind her, the cottage door creaked open. Elder Melis stepped out slowly, her silver-braided hair resting over one shoulder, her sharp eyes taking in the guards with undisguised displeasure. The palace has no business in these woods, the old woman said calmly, though tension threaded her voice. My granddaughter is not of court life. The king's summons is not a request, the captain replied. Silence stretched. Iva accepted the parchment, unsealing it with steady hands. Her ocean-deep eyes scanned the elegant script. Formal, commanding, absolute. She felt no excitement reading it. Only disturbance, like ripples across still water. I will not go, she said quietly, handing the parchment back. The guards stiffened slightly. Melis exhaled in relief, but it was brief, fragile relief. Because 3 nights later, they returned. This time, more of them. And the tone of the summons had changed. No parchment was offered. No courtesy extended. The Alpha King does not repeat invitations, the captain said. You will come to the capital. Preparations have already been made for your stay. The unspoken message hung heavy in the air. Refusal was no longer an option. Iva felt her grandmother's hand grip hers tightly. She didn't need to look to know fear had settled into the old woman's bones, not fear of the king himself, but of what the palace represented. Power. Secrets. Old forces long kept away from the woodland girl. Iva's gaze drifted past the guards, into the forest behind them. The trees felt different that morning, quieter, watchful, almost mournful. She understood then. If she refused again, the pressure would not stop with her. It would fall on her home, her grandmother, the fragile piece of the woodland territory. So she made her choice. Not for the king, but for protection. I will go, she said softly. Melis turned sharply. Child. It's all right, grandmother, Iva whispered, though her eyes held shadows. I won't let harm come here. Preparations were simple. She owned little to pack, a few dresses, her herb satchel, and the silver hair comb her grandmother insisted she wear. When the royal carriage arrived at the woodland edge, the forest felt heavier than ever before. As Iva stepped inside, she looked back once. At the cottage. At her grandmother standing small among towering trees. At the life she had always known. A strange chill slid down her spine, not fear exactly, but the sense of walking toward something that had already begun long before her birth. The carriage doors closed. Horses pulled forward. And as the woodland faded behind her, the wind carried a whisper through the trees. Not warning her to stay, but mourning that she had left. The capital fortress did not welcome gently, it overwhelmed. Towering obsidian gates opened as Iva Lirael's carriage rolled inside, revealing a palace carved from black stone and silver marble that seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. Vast courtyards stretched outward, filled with armored warriors training in synchronized precision. Banners bearing the royal wolf crest hung high above, snapping sharply in the mountain winds. Everything about the place spoke of power, dominance, rule. And as Iva stepped down from the carriage, dressed not in jewels but in her simple woodland blue, that power seemed to pause, just slightly. Servants froze mid-step. Guards glanced twice. It was subtle, but it happened everywhere she walked. By the time she was escorted into the grand throne hall, word had already outrun her footsteps. The hall itself was immense, columns shaped like entwined wolves rose toward a vaulted ceiling painted with ancient Pak victories. Moonlight filtered through high crystal windows, casting pale silver light across the polished obsidian floor. And gathered within that hall were the court maidens, noble daughters, warrior heiresses, future political brides. They had assembled out of curiosity more than duty, eager to see the woodland girl who had captured the Alpha King's attention enough to summon her personally. Their whispers filled the air like insects. Until Iva entered. Silence did not fall instantly, but it spread quickly. One by one, conversations died. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Shock replaced curiosity. Because no description had prepared them. Her beauty did not compete with theirs, it erased comparison entirely. She looked untouched by court artifice, untrained in seductive posture, unadorned by jewels, yet she glowed faintly beneath the moonlit windows as though the light favored her alone. Jealousy sparked fast and sharp. That's her? She looks like a spirit. No wolfless girl should look like that. Their murmurs trembled between awe and resentment. Then, the throne hall doors behind the dais opened. Heavy. Echoing. And Alpha King Kalian entered. Conversations died completely now. He descended the short steps toward his throne with the confidence of a man born to command gravity itself. His black ceremonial coat rested broad across his shoulders, silver wolf embroidery catching the light with each step. He did not look at the court first. He looked at her. And he stopped. It was subtle, a pause so brief most would miss it. But the throne hall felt it. Because Alpha King Kalian did not pause for anyone. Golden eyes locked onto Iva Lirael where she stood at the center of the hall. For the first time since hearing her description. He saw her. Truly saw her. And something unreadable crossed his face, not softness, but impact. Like a warrior struck once, cleanly, where armor did not reach. She did not bow immediately. Not out of disrespect, but because she had never been trained in court customs. She simply stood there, calm, ocean-eyed, meeting the gaze of the most powerful alpha alive without trembling. That alone stirred tension. Kalian descended the last step slowly, stopping a few feet before her. Up close, her glow was clearer, faint but real, like sea light beneath water. So, he said at last, voice deep, controlled, you are the wolfless maiden who has stirred my territory into poetry. His gaze moved over her face, measured, unhidden. You were described as beautiful. A pause. The reports were insufficient. A ripple of reaction moved through the court. Iva lowered her gaze slightly, not submissive, but respectful. My king, she said softly, voice calm as a still tide. He circled her once, slow, assessing, predatory not in threat, but possession. Court maidens watched with tightening jaws as their alpha studied another woman so openly. You carry no wolf scent, he noted. No, my king. Yet you do not tremble before me. I have done nothing wrong to fear judgment. The answer surprised him. A faint smirk touched his lips, intrigued, not offended. Silence stretched between them, thick with observation. Then, without warning, Kalian turned toward the throne dais, but he did not ascend it. Instead, he spoke loudly enough for the entire court to hear. This maiden, he declared, will remain in the palace. Gasps fluttered instantly. He continued before whispers could form. I have seen enough to decide my interest. He turned back to her, golden eyes sharp with public authority and private curiosity. Iva Lirael of the woodland territory, he said, voice echoing through stone and silence alike, I am considering you as my future mate. The hall erupted. Not in noise, but in shock. Court maidens stiffened, some paling, others burning with fury. Nobles exchanged startled glances. Even high-ranking warriors shifted in surprise. Because the Alpha King did not speak lightly about mating. And he had never, not once, declared interest so quickly. Iva's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her calm since arriving. She had expected curiosity. Perhaps scrutiny. But not this. Not a claim spoken before an entire court. The weight of hundreds of stares pressed into her skin as Kalian held her gaze, utterly certain, utterly unapologetic. To him, the declaration was simple. He had seen beauty worthy of his throne. And he spoke accordingly. But what he expected in return was not what would come next. The words of the Alpha King still hung in the throne hall like thunder that had not yet finished rolling. I am considering you as my future mate. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. Every eye in the court shifted to Iva Lirael, waiting, measuring, already assuming her answer. Because there had never been a maiden foolish enough, or powerful enough, to deny Alpha King Kalian publicly. For most women, such a declaration would have been a triumph. An honor. A victory over every rival in the hall. But Iva did not look victorious. She looked unsettled. Not flattered. Not overwhelmed. Just quietly disturbed, like still water rippling from an unwanted stone. Kalian noticed the change instantly. His golden gaze sharpened, confidence unmoved but curiosity tightening beneath it. Well, he prompted, voice smooth but edged with expectation. You may speak. The hall leaned in collectively. Iva inhaled slowly. When she lifted her eyes to his again, there was no fear in them. No excitement either. Only calm clarity. My king, she began, her voice soft, yet it carried cleanly through the vast chamber. Your interest honors me, but I cannot accept what you are offering. The words landed gently, but their impact was violent. Silence did not fall this time. It crashed. The throne hall froze so completely it felt as though time itself had stumbled. Kalian did not react at first. Not visibly. Because what she had said did not register as refusal. Not immediately. His brows drew together slightly, more confusion than anger. You cannot accept, he repeated slowly, as though testing the structure of the sentence. Yes, my king. Still calm. Still respectful. Still unshaken beneath the weight of his stare. I do not wish to be chosen as a mate, she continued. Not out of obligation, and not without love. A collective inhale rippled through the court. Some maidens looked horrified. Others looked thrilled, witnessing what they thought was social suicide. No maiden has ever rejected him. The truth of that statement settled heavily now, because everyone present understood what was unfolding. And they understood the danger of it. Kalian's expression did not explode into rage. That would have been easier. Instead, it hardened. His golden eyes lost warmth entirely, turning metallic, predatory. Do you understand, he asked quietly, what you are refusing? I do. You refuse the throne beside me. Yes. You refuse power, protection, status beyond any maiden in this hall. Yes, my king. Each answer was steady. Unapologetic. And with every one, the fracture spread deeper through his pride. Because rejection in private could be dismissed. Rejection before his entire court was humiliation. A slow, suffocating pressure filled the hall as Kalian stepped closer to her, close enough that the heat of his wolf aura brushed her skin. Look at me when you refuse me, he said, voice low, dangerous. She did. Ocean-deep eyes meeting molten gold. Unflinching. That was the moment his pride cracked. Not loudly, but internally, sharp as bone splitting beneath strain. Because she was not trembling. Not pleading forgiveness. Not reconsidering. She was certain. And certainty, in that moment, felt like defiance. The hall felt colder as Kalian straightened slowly. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. No longer curious. No longer intrigued. Now it was edged in steel. Very well. 2 simple words. But the fury beneath them was suffocating. You refuse me, publicly, he continued, turning slightly so his voice carried to every corner of the throne hall. You reject the Alpha King of Crescent Moon. No one moved. No one dared. His next words were colder. Then you will remain here. Iva blinked once, caught off guard. My king. As a guest, he finished, though the words sounded more like a sentence than hospitality. Gasps rose again. He faced her fully now, pride armoring every inch of his posture. You interest me still, he said, voice low enough for only her, and those closest, to hear. And I do not release what interests me so easily. This was no longer a proposal. It was control reasserting itself. You will stay in the palace until I decide otherwise, he declared. Consider it. Education and the honor you refused. His humiliation had transformed cleanly into cold authority. No shouting. No loss of composure. But the brutality lay in the restraint. Because everyone in the hall could feel it. The wounded pride. The disbelief. The fury held on a leash made of kingship. Iva lowered her gaze slightly, not submissive, but thoughtful, calculating the consequences. I meant no disrespect, she said softly. Kalian's reply was immediate. And yet you delivered it perfectly. Silence followed again, heavier this time, charged with something far more dangerous than shock. Possession. Obsession. In that moment, the entire court understood 2 truths at once. The wolfless girl had just done the impossible. And the Alpha King, who had never been denied anything in his life. I would not forget it. Nor forgive it easily. Life inside the palace did not soften after the rejection. If anything, it sharpened. Iva Lirael was given chambers far grander than anything she had ever known, high-arched windows, silk-draped bedding, polished silver mirrors, yet none of it felt like comfort. The walls were too tall, the corridors too watchful, the air too heavy with power and expectation. She moved through it all quietly, like mist that had wandered into stone by accident. And though the palace bustled constantly, she was never truly alone. Because Alpha King Kalian watched her. Not openly. Never in ways that would expose the depth of his fixation. But always. From elevated balconies overlooking the training courtyards, he observed her when she walked with palace servants, her simple dresses untouched by royal extravagance. From shadowed archways, he watched her pause to help an injured stable hand, kneeling without hesitation despite her guest status. She treated no one with superiority. Not guards. Not maids. Not even the lowest workers assigned to kitchen fires. Her kindness was effortless, unperformed, unstrategic. It unsettled him more than her beauty had. Because palace kindness was usually currency. Hers was instinct. Worse still, there were moments when she stood near open windows at night, moonlight spilling across her skin, and that strange, sea-like glow returned faintly. Not bright enough to alarm, but present enough to disturb the Alpha's senses. There was still no wolf aura. Yet something about her presence pressed against his instincts in ways he could not name. Ancient. Vast. Quietly powerful. He told himself his interest was rooted in pride, unfinished business after her refusal. But pride did not explain the dreams. They began subtly. A glimpse of her walking along a silver shoreline. Her hair moved like dark water in the moonlight. Her eyes glowing not blue, but luminous, tidal, endless. In the dreams, his wolf did not dominate her. It circled her. Restless. Drawn. Almost reverent. Kalian would wake from those dreams irritated, jaw tight, sheets twisted beneath him. He had shared beds with powerful women before without his wolf stirring so violently afterward. But with her, even unconscious imagination provoked instinct. And when he encountered her in waking life, it worsened. His wolf paced beneath his skin whenever she entered a room, not aggressive, not territorial. But alert. Awake. Watching her the way he did. It angered him. Because wolves did not react to the wolfless. Yet his did. Meanwhile, the palace court had begun shifting around her presence. Court maidens who once competed subtly now shared a common enemy. Jealousy sharpened quickly when it became clear the Alpha's attention had not faded after her rejection, it had deepened. They noticed the way his gaze tracked her unconsciously. The way he dismissed conversations when she entered the hall. The way he grew colder toward other women. So resentment bloomed behind silk smiles. Whispers followed her through the corridors. She enchants him somehow. No wolfless girl he desired has ever refused him before. She's playing humble to appear special. Plots formed quietly, social traps, humiliations disguised as etiquette lessons, attempts to expose weakness or provoke royal displeasure. Yet Iva moved through every scheme untouched. Not because she was cunning, but because she refused to engage at all. When insulted, she did not retaliate. When mocked, she did not defend herself. When flaunted before her, she simply excused herself calmly. It infuriated them more than open rivalry would have. Even Kalian tested her resistance personally. He summoned her to private dinners under the guise of court adjustment. He offered jewels, she declined politely. He assigned royal tutors, she listened but remained unchanged. He pressed conversation toward dominance, power, mating customs. And every time, she answered respectfully, yet never yielded ground. She did not flirt. Did not blush. did not seek his approval. It was not fear that held her distance. It was a choice. And that choice fed his obsession like oxygen feeds flame. Because Kalian had conquered territories, crushed rebellions, and commanded loyalty with ease. But he could not command her interest. Could not bend her will. Could not make her look at him the way other maidens did. So he watched her more. Dreamed of her more. Felt his wolf grow increasingly restless in her presence. Until fascination blurred into something darker. Not love. Not yet. But possession sharpened by mystery. And all the while, within palace walls lined with gold and power, the wolfless girl remained the only thing the Alpha King could not control. The warning did not come through royal doors. It came through the wind. 3 nights after the court tensions reached their peak, Iva was summoned quietly to the palace gardens, not by the Alpha, but by a hooded messenger bearing the woodland healer's crest. Her grandmother's crest. Hidden beneath the shadow of moonlit vines, the messenger handed her a small bundle wrapped in forest linen. Inside lay a silver thread talisman Iva had worn as a child, one she had not seen in years. And a message. Not written. Spoken through the messenger in Elder Malus' exact voice, a memory spell only old magic wielders could cast. My child, the seal is weakening. Iva's breath caught. You were never wolfless, the voice continued gently. You were hidden. Bound. Protected. Her fingers tightened around the talisman as the truth she had never been told began to surface, half memory, half instinct. You are born of the Thalsaran line, the sea-blooded. Older than the crescent moon packs. Older than Alpha rule itself. Iva's heart pounded. The power within you was sealed at birth, not erased. If awakened fully, it will draw kings, wars, and ruin if unguarded. A pause. Heavy. You must not let the Alpha claim you before the seal breaks. The spell faded. Silence reclaimed the garden. But Iva was no longer alone. Because unseen beyond the stone archway, Alpha King Kalian had heard enough. Not every word. Not the full truth. But the parts that mattered. Not wolfless. Ancient bloodline. Power sealed. His golden eyes darkened in the shadows, hunger and destiny igniting at once. So the mystery deepened. The girl who had rejected him was not empty. She was a hidden power waiting to rise. And now his obsession was no longer driven by pride alone, but by fate. The attack came on a night meant for celebration. The palace had gathered beneath the open moon courtyard for the Silver Hunt Festival, a tradition where warriors honored past victories and maidens displayed lineage dances before the court. Music filled the air, torches burned high, and nobles drank beneath banners of the crescent moon crest. Iva had not wished to attend. But refusal was no longer easily granted within palace walls. So she stood near the outer marble railings, dressed simply as always, watching rather than participating. Moonlight poured over the courtyard, and over her, until her skin carried that faint, sea-lit glow once more. It did not go unnoticed. Not by the court maidens who had grown tired of her presence. And certainly not by those whose jealousy had festered into something uglier. The strike was swift. Planned. Cowardly. A ceremonial dance shifted suddenly into chaos when 3 masked maidens broke formation, silver blades drawn from beneath silk sleeves. They lunged not toward the Alpha, but toward Iva. Gasps shattered the music. Guards reacted too late, the attackers were already within striking distance. Iva did not even have time to step back. Steel flashed toward her heart. And that was the moment the seal broke. It did not shatter loudly. It unraveled. Like ancient chains dissolving in water. Power erupted from her body in a silent, violent surge, not wolf aura, something far older. Sea light exploded outward in a blinding wave, throwing the attackers back before their blades could touch her skin. The torches around the courtyard extinguished instantly. Darkness swallowed the festival. Except for her. She stood at the center of it all, glowing. Not faintly this time, but radiantly. Her hair lifted as though moved by underwater currents, midnight strands streaked now with silver light. Her eyes burned luminous blue, deep, endless, tidal. And behind her, a spirit formed. Not fully flesh. Not fully mist. An ancient wolf, vast, elegant, forged from moonlight and ocean tide. Its fur shimmered like liquid silver, its eyes holding the same endless depth as hers. It did not snarl. It did not rage. I watched. Old. Sovereign. Awake at last. The entire courtyard fell to their knees instinctively, not to the alpha, but to her power. Even the attackers lay frozen where they had been thrown, trembling beneath the weight of what they had tried to destroy. At the far end of the courtyard, Kalian stood motionless. For the first time in his reign, shock stripped him bare. Not because she had power, but because of what that power was. Ancient. Primal. Greater than alpha dominance. His wolf did not challenge it. His wolf bowed to it. He stepped forward slowly, golden eyes no longer burning with pride, but something rawer. Reverence. Iva, her name left him quieter than it ever had before. The spirit wolf behind her shifted, watching him carefully as he approached. Every warrior present held their breath. Because Alpha King Kalian, undefeated ruler, breaker of rival kings, did something no one had ever witnessed. He lowered himself. Not fully kneeling at first, but bowing his head. I spoke before out of pride, he said, voice carrying across the stunned courtyard. Out of possession, not understanding. He sank to one knee fully now, the marble cracking faintly beneath the weight of his submission. Gasps rippled through the wolves gathered. I see you now, he continued. Not as a conquest, but as destiny. His golden gaze lifted to hers, no arrogance remaining. Be my mate, Iva Lirael. Not because I claim you. A breath. But because I asked you. Silence held the world still. Sea light swirled around her, an ancient wolf spirit looming protectively at her back. For a moment it seemed fate itself leaned forward to hear her answer. And when she spoke, her voice was calm as ever. Gentle. Unmoved by the power awakening within her. My king. I thank you for your humility. A pause. But her next words cut cleanly through the night. But my answer remains the same. The courtyard froze again. Kalian did not move. Did not breathe. I will not be bound by fate, or power, or pressure, she continued softly. Not even now. The spirit wolf behind her did not react, as though it already knew her will. I will choose love freely, or not at all. And with that, she turned away from the kneeling Alpha King. Leaving the most powerful ruler alive bowed before her. Not rejected out of pride, but out of unshakable self-will. Moonlight returned to the palace slowly after the chaos, cautious, as though the sky itself now regarded the crescent moon throne with new awareness. No festival resumed. No music dared rise again. The courtyard where warriors once celebrated now stood marked by the memory of sea light that had eclipsed torch fire and alpha dominance alike. And at the center of every whispered conversation was her. Iva Lirael, no longer called wolfless. Now spoken of in hushed reverence as sea-born, ancient blood, spirit-touched. She had not been seen publicly since the awakening. Not because she was hidden, but because space had been given, instinctively, respectfully, even by those who once envied her. Power like hers demanded distance. Observation. Caution. Within the highest tower chamber, she stood alone at the balcony, overlooking the vast mountain territory stretching beyond the capital walls. The night wind moved gently around her, no longer cold, responding, almost, to her presence. When she lifted her hand, faint ribbons of sea light traced her fingers before dissolving into the air. Controlled. Awake. No longer sealed. Behind her, the chamber doors remained open, a silent invitation rather than confinement. No guards posted. No orders issued. Because no one, not even the Alpha King, would dare cage what had awakened. Kalian watched from the shadowed corridor beyond the doorway. Not hiding, but keeping distance, a respect learned through shock and humbled instinct. His pride had not vanished. But it had evolved. Tempered by the knowledge that strength alone did not define supremacy anymore. Not when her power had made his wolf bow without command. He did not approach her that night. Did not speak. He simply watched the faint glow surrounding her silhouette against the moon. And for the first time since claiming his throne, Kalian considered a truth that reshaped the future of his reign. If her power continued to grow, if the ancient blood within her fully awakened, then the balance of dominance in the Crescent Moon territories would change forever. Because she would not rule beside him as queen by claim. She could stand above him by right of power. And she did not even desire the throne. That was what made her most dangerous. Most irresistible. Most inevitable. Far below, wolves across the capital felt the shift in the night air, instinct recognizing what politics had not yet spoken aloud. An ancient force had returned to their world. Not to conquer, but to awaken destiny long buried beneath Alpha rule. And high above them all, sea light shimmered softly around the girl who had rejected a king twice. Yet might one day surpass him entirely.